thing, but environmental economics and resource economics are somewhat recent in the sense 70s, 60s and all. And gender studies also has come into prominence, and now it has become a separate discipline of its own, gender studies. So, and everywhere gender studies is offered, and it's not just the question of being offered, it is the question of using this as a tool to understand, to find some solutions for the development issues. So gender is also, gender problems, not exactly gender itself, but the gender problems are also development issues. So in the process of development, what is happening to men and women, understanding what is happening to, rather than thinking that, it is human beings. Of course, all are human beings, but there are differences. So that is how actually we economists have got a major role to play in this. So with this, I will go to the, first of all, I would like to spend some time on some clarity about the concepts. I strongly believe in having clear conceptual clarity, because once your concept is clear, it will be easy for you to apply it anywhere. And especially the gender concepts, as as you know, gender cuts across disciplines. So you have feminist researchers, not only from economics, you have feminist researchers from different walks: history, political science, languages, and social sciences, biological sciences. So many disciplines have contributed to gender studies. So that is why I thought that first I will clarify some of these things. You should have a clarity about these concepts. Then you can apply them wherever it is possible. So I would like to clarify first thing about the sex and gender. Sex is biological differences, whereas gender refers to socially constructed. So this is very, very important. Why we are addressing gender issues? Because the sex differences, we have very little control over it. The biological, to be born as a man or to be born as a woman or to be born as a boy, to be born as a girl, we have very little control over that, because that is being biologically determined by your XX chromosome and XY chromosome. So all females carry XX chromosome and we men carry XY chromosome. So they come from each parent, and the offspring or the baby is going to get 2 X's or 1 XY. So that we have very little control over those things. So to be born as a man or a woman, we have very little control. But gender, we have control over it, because gender is socially constructed. So when you have a physical appearance as a man, you are expected to do certain things. And when you have a physical appearance as a female, so you have certain things, certain responsibilities. So these responsibilities, they did not come from anywhere from Upar. So they are made by us. So because you are a girl, you have to do this. Because you are a girl, you should not be doing that. So these differences, this is what is called the gender differences. So these gender differences they are socially constructed. Means, what is okay in some communities is not okay in some communities. For example, parda system. In Muslim communities, they have the parda system for females. That is not there in other cultural groups. So, but that means the gender differences are the gender norms they are different from different communities. So they are made by society. So because they are made by society, if there are gender differences, if there are gender biases, we have to address, and they are addressable. Gender differences can be addressed. Gender differences can be addressed and reduced because they are made by us. So what is biological, we have no control. We can't do anything about it. So being socially constructed, this is what I have written here. Being socially constructed, gender differences vary depending on race, caste, class, ethnicity, religion, age, marital status, and all these things. And sexual differences, they vary very little. Whether this female is in India or anywhere else, they carry XX chromosome. And whatever comes through XX chromosome, that type is same for men, for women across the world, they are the same. But whereas a girl, what she can do in India may not be acceptable in other countries or whatever in other communities. So that is what is called the gender differences. So gender being socially constructed, the gender disparities can be reduced. So anything coming out of these gender differences, So that can be reduced, that can be actually addressed, or that can be reduced. See, for example, in patriarchal society, man is head of the household. So in patriarchal society, man is head of the household, man should be earning. So these are by society, they believe that man should be strong because man has to earn, man has to go out and earn money, and man has to go out to forest and cut wood and bring money. So man has to be strong. So because of that, what happened? So more resources are flown to men and less are to women. And similarly, education. In education also, because man has to earn, he should get good education and he should get good job. So they will be sent to good education, good schools, whereas girls, because they are to their responsibilities, taking care of the home. So in economic sense, what it means is, this is the distribution of resources. Can everybody mute? I request all of you to mute. Otherwise, it creates so much problem.
Santosh sir, mute modi.
I request all of you to mute your microphone, please, because it uses so much of resound. Okay. So these gender differences can be addressed. So in a sense, the other, this clearly tells gender versus. Why I am talking so much about gender is, unless until you are convinced that gender is made by us, you would never be understanding that there are gender differences. So sex is biological and given by birth, so therefore cannot be changed. Example, only women can give birth. So that nobody can change. So similarly, only men can impregnate. So these are, even by nature, you have no control over that. But whereas gender is not like that. So gender is cultural and it is made by society. So therefore, we can change.
Mute ಮಾಡಿ. Mr. Santosh KB, mute ಮಾಡಿ.
I don't know why you people don't understand that you have to mute. I want to know if all of you are from Karnataka or some outsiders are also there, other state participants are also there. Are there some other state participants?
Yes, madam.
Okay, fine. Then I will continue only English. Because end of the day, if you tell that I never spoke in Kannada, I don't want to be. Otherwise, I would make it bilingual. But if there are from outside other state, okay, I would continue in English. Okay. So these are the differences. Unless until you stop, it is very, very difficult. You mute. Okay.
Santosh, please mute your mic.
Organizer should mute, I think. Okay. It disturbs the thought process. Yeah. Okay, and then a few concepts I'm talking about. Quickly, I'll go, then come to economics, gender economics. So the gender norms, what is meant by gender norms? Because,
Mr. Santosh.
I don't know why. Okay, it is not possible to mute from my side. It is only organizers can do that. Okay. So gender norms, quickly I want to go through. So gender norms are the norms, rules and regulations that govern the behavior of men and women. So restrictive gender, why gender norms are important is, gender norms will determine the flow of resources. If gender norms say that women need not go out, and so they need not be educated, so there won't be any money to send the girls won't be sent to school. So that is one example of gender norms. So gender norms are not static. Gender norms are changing, and they change across the religion. Shall I call now? HRDC
Santosh KB. Please mute for video.
First time I'm facing this issue. First time I'm facing this issue. Never I faced this issue. So gender norms. So gender norms are not static, and they keep changing in the sense, particularly. And Navita asked HRDC to mute everybody. Otherwise, they are not muting. So much of noise. Yeah. Yeah, tell them to mute everybody. Okay. So gender norms are not static. They are dynamic. They keep changing over a period of time and different communities. As I told you, what is okay in some community may not be okay in another community. So the gender norms, but why we are talking about gender norms is they determine the distribution of resources in economics, because all of us are economics. We talk in terms of resources and distribution. Household as a unit, how distribution takes place is, it is based on the gender norms. In gender norms, for example, dowry for a girl, dowry has to be given. So resources are kept more for her marriage rather than for her education. So that is why actually gender norms are very, very important. So I'm going to use all these concepts when I'm talking about the application of gender to economics. So that is why I'm just introducing these things. So gender roles. So gender roles are defined as productive roles and reproductive roles. So productive roles are going out and working, and the work of generating income that men and women do. So these are the productive roles. So anytime you go out to work for some wage, so it is a productive role. But whereas you spend so many hours within the household, taking care of the family, and without any payment, taking care of the elders, that is what is known as the reproductive roles. So when women, they spend more time, they have, like there are 24 hours. So in this, your active hours are maybe some 10 hours. So 10 hours, if you give more to productive hours, you have less number for, if you spend more on reproductive roles, you have less number of time available for the productive roles. So, and gender needs. So gender needs is also another important concept that we use. So in gender needs, we have practical gender needs and the strategic gender needs. So practical gender needs, they are just day-to-day needs. For example, women menstruate and they need menstrual pads. So that, that is as simple as that. They are the practical needs. They don't question whether power is with men or women. Those are not the things. Maternity leave, that is practical need because women produce babies. So that doesn't question whether who is more and who is less. Whereas the strategic gender needs are, there are needs identified because of their subordinate position. See, for example, there is no property right for women because she is a woman. So that is actually this ensuring equal rights, equal property rights is a strategic need, because this is not gender sensitization class. I'm not spending too much time on this. And gender analysis. Gender analysis is also a very, very important concept. So when gender budgeting takes place, gender audit takes place, we use gender analysis. And not only budget and audit, we also use gender analysis for evaluation of impact evaluation of any program or preparing any development program. Gender analysis is very, very important. So gender analysis is nothing but it is an organized approach considering gender issues and through the process of programming and organizational development. So gender analysis, when you are doing gender analysis, you look at what are the strategic needs, what are the practical needs, whether strategic needs are met or practical needs are met. If any program is going to be prepared or implemented, you will see whether it met the strategic needs or it met the practical needs of both the gender, both male as well as female. So one thing all of you remember, when I'm talking about gender, we talk about, it means both men and women. So gender analysis is done at every stage of the project. And other three concepts are gender sensitivity, gender responsiveness, and gender audit. Gender sensitivity is, it is the ability to perceive existing differences, issues and inequalities and incorporate them in the strategies. See, for example, blanket policy, give 1,000 rupees everybody. So that is a blanket policy. Or let us talk about taxes. So when GST is imposed, they have looked at only the, what is called the products. So these products, this much GST, this percentage GST. So this category of products, this is, so the GST range is fixed And some products are given 8%, 7%, like that it is given. So that is blanket. But whereas gender responsive tax policies, they look at what are the products which are women specific. See, for example, menstruation, sanitary pads. When government imposes the equal amount of taxes on these necessities, so what happened is their cost has increased and it became impossible for girls to buy them. So when this was raised by feminist activists, several feminist activists are behind this. So then government has reduced the tax on that. So that is gender responsiveness. If our tax system is gender responsive, it will look into the strategic needs and practical needs and gender differences, then impose the tax or expenditure. That is, in gender budget, we look at the expenditure pattern as well as the tax pattern also. That is gender responsive. If the budget is gender responsive, it will take into consideration where men are located, where women are located. Another example of gender responsiveness is what is called tax benefit, tax relief. One of the budgets, Government of India has given tax relief to women. So some tax relief was given to women. But what has happened is, it is shown as if, our government is gender responsive and provided more income to women so that, tax bracket, they will be in the lower tax bracket. But in reality, how many women are in tax paying capacity? How many women are in organized sector? So very few women are, of course, women are working. Many are in unorganized sector. Many are in low paid jobs. So this will touch only few women. But whereas the tax on sanitary pads, it touches everybody. So that is how actually the gender responsiveness of the policymakers will affect men and women. So it is important to have the gender responsiveness. Gender audit also. In gender audit also, actually recently, in the sense before last year, we prepared gender audit manual with Fiscal Policy Institute. So gender audit, any program is implemented, usually there will be financial audit. In financial audit, they look at whether economy is maintained and efficiency is maintained. 3 E's are there. But whereas in the case of gender audit, we also look at equity. So whether men and women are equally benefited by this program, any program that is being implemented. So that is what is called the gender audit. And gender division of labor. So this is another concept. Gender division of labor means overall societal pattern where women are allotted one set of gender roles and men are another. See, gender division of labor is labor, work. So, or you can say bringing water. Bringing water is usually, it is only women. Means, some tasks are assigned for women. So, taking care of cooking and some responsibilities are assigned to women and some responsibilities are assigned to men. This is what is called the gender division of labor. All our labor, means labor is involved in transforming raw material into finished product. So in this process, men are assigned certain roles, certain duties, and women are assigned. So that is what is called the division of gender division of labor. See, for example, in agriculture nati, what is called transplantation. So transplantation is mainly done by women. So that is another example of gender division of labor. So within labor, within agriculture, certain labor is assigned only to women. And gender mainstreaming, everybody is talking about gender mainstreaming. So gender mainstreaming is another concept which is used, which means that involving systematically integrating gender equality perspective at every stage. See, gender budgeting is another instrument of gender mainstreaming. In gender budgeting, we are involving gender concerns in the budget process. So similarly, gender mainstreaming can take place in projects, in programs, in policy. Just so gender mainstreaming is the very opposite of strategy of segregating. In gender mainstreaming, the main intention is to bring both genders, to bring both men and women in the program planning and implementation, affecting both men and women equally. So that is what is called gender mainstreaming. And gender discrimination. So generally people are using gender discrimination. Gender discrimination is, it is not based on anything. It is discrimination based on your gender. So any distinction, exclusion or restriction made on the basis of socially, culturally constructed gender roles. So because you are a female and because your responsibility is to cook inside the house, to cook for the family members, you are not allowed to go for work in Bangalore. So that is pure discrimination based on gender. These roles, cooking and not cooking. So cooking is assigned responsibility for females socially. Men also can cook, but it is socially assigned to women. So because she is assigned the role of cooking, she is not allowed to go out to work because who will take care of the house? So that is a pure gender discrimination. This discrimination is not because she is not capable of working, not because she gets less salary, not because of anything, purely because her role is within the household. That discrimination, boy will be sent out and girl is not sent out. So that is what is called the gender discrimination. Gender discrimination is discrimination between boy and girl purely based on the gendered roles. And gender equality and gender equity. In economics, we know what is meant by, in tax, actually public finance, we talk about horizontal equity and vertical equity. So what is gender equity? What is gender equality? There is, even though they look same, they are not, they are different. So gender equity is a process ensuring equal opportunity for both men and women. Equality is the end product. Equality is the end product where, both have equal opportunity and equal choices. But whereas in ensuring equity will lead to what is called the equality. So equity, in equity we'll have horizontal equity and vertical equity. One example for a gender equity measure is, I can talk about Panchayat Raj institutions. So in Panchayat Raj institutions, 74th, 75th Amendment, the Government of India has given what is called reservation for women, elected women representatives. So apparently it looks like it is discrimination. Why women should be given reservation? Some men argue, some people argue that men are arguing for equality. Why men should be given reservation? So why? Because it is to ensure equity. So equity has horizontal equity and vertical equity. Equally located people are to be treated equally. Unequally located people are to be treated unequally. So men and women are not equally located. So it is important to give equity. And the same argument applies to reservations for different categories. So because they are not differentially located, they are to be given some weightage so that equity can be ensured. That is also equity. So, and feminist economic analysis. So feminist economic analysis, now let us come to our subject, because why I introduced all these things, I think when we are proceeding, you will understand why I took time to explain to you the concepts. So feminist economic analysis focuses on gender as a unit of economic analysis. See, when we are talking about demand theory or supply theory, in supply theory, we are talking about the institutions, the firms. And when we are talking about demand, we are talking about individual demand and aggregate demand. So there, you are analyzing individual as a unit. But, there you are not distinguishing whether the demand of men or women, whether the demand of female or male. We are not distinguishing that. So demand theory means when price increases, demand decreases. Whose demand decreases? Whether the demand of the products that are purchased by women also decreases, or whether the demand for when price decreases, demand increases, whether this happens for all the products, or are there any gender differences? We never bothered about these things. So feminist economists, they started looking at these differences. So feminist economic analysis focuses on gender as a unit of economic analysis. So when we are talking about supply, we look at the firm as a unit. And in gender economic analysis, we focus gender as a unit of economic analysis. It considers men's and women's unpaid labor and their different responsibilities for the care of children and community, as well as macroeconomic variables. See, people have developed computable general equilibrium models. In gender economics, it is a very, very upcoming area, and I urge some of you take up these issues in your research, because so much of quantitative techniques are being used in feminist economics. It is also known as feminist economics or You can call it as a gender economics also. So a lot of research is going on using the quantitative techniques and dummy variable models, and also computable general equilibrium model has been developed some 20 years ago. And people are using many models to explain the gender differences and in economic phenomena. So feminist economic analysis seeks to understand the impact of gendered division of labor on women's empowerment, their well-being, and types of work they undertake. It also looks at women's unpaid work and how the intensification and expansion of trade may impact on this. Now, to what extent feminist economists are, there is one association. Those of you, those who are not interested in the lecture, probably they can put it off. It is not, I'm not doing for the sake of doing, I'm doing it for the sake of you people taking it up and further research. I wish that you should contribute. So the feminist economics, there is International Association for Feminist Economics, IAFF, International Association for Feminist Economics. So it has a lot of material. You can also become member. Membership is, I think, some $50 or something. It is located in US. Of course, Western influence is there, but there is also from our South also, there are several, researchers have contributed. So our Beena Agarwal and Jaiti Ghosh, you must be knowing Jaiti Ghosh. Jaiti Ghosh lectures are there online. I'm giving the link. You can also follow it if you are interested to do something in this particular area in gender and economics. And feminist economics, if you want to do, you can listen to Jaiti Ghosh. He is the top economist, feminist economics, feminist economist. And we have Beena Agarwal. She has contributed internationally. And she is founder member of International Association for Feminist Economics. And also we have Vibhuti Patel in Bombay. So all these people, many more are there. In earlier generation, we have Devaki Jain, and these people have contributed so much. All these are from economics. Devaki Jain basically studied economics. Vibhuti Patel is from economics. Beena Agarwal is from economics, JNU. So many economics people have contributed for the growth of feminist economics. So it seeks to understand the division of labor because, economy is all, it's a system. You just can't segregate one and see that this is like this. When you are operating one, the other variable gets affected. So it is important to have an understanding of the gender roles. So differential impact of macroeconomic policies. Why we economists, we are trained in economics. Why we have to look at the gender differences is because there is a differential impact of macroeconomic policies. Take any macroeconomic policy. See, for example, our structural adjustment program. I always talk about structural adjustment program because it is a big macroeconomic policy which has covered many, which has impacted several sectors. So when new economic policy was introduced and structural adjustment program was introduced, people thought that this macroeconomic policy is gender neutral. So what is meant by gender neutral? So gender neutral means it affects men and women equally. It doesn't have more bad impact on women. It actually, when macroeconomic policies are introduced, the assumption was that market-friendly policies, or it is also known as neoliberal policies. So this was international institutions, World Bank, IMF, they proposed that your economy has to be, you have to open up your economy and promote more market forces so that your resources become efficient. So that is the logic of introducing the marketization and all these our neoliberal policies. So when those things were introduced, people thought that it is, I remember that literature also. So people thought that, these policies would not cause any extra burden on women. So people, they promoted that, these policies are gender neutral. They don't cause any extra burden. Because, any time an economy is moving away from completely planned and controlled economy. Before new economic policy, before 1991, Indian economy was a controlled economy. So everything was in public sector. And from there, we introduced a structural adjustment program and we moved to the market economy. When economy is moving from highly controlled market to market economy, certainly there will be some gainers and some losers. It is not that everybody gains. Some losers will be there and some gainers will be there. Some kinds of jobs would have gone, some professions would have gone, somebody must have lost jobs and livelihoods. But at the same time, there are also benefits. So when economy is moving away from the controlled economy to market economy, so these transitions, in this transition, there are certain costs. So what the economists thought was, when this program was implemented, it's a big macroeconomic policy implemented, they thought that it will affect both men and women equally. There is no extra burden on women. But some people have argued that it will cause more burden to women than men. Why? Because the kind of jobs in which women are employed and the kind of jobs in which men are employed, they are different. And the kinds of skill set men have, the skill set that women have was different. Imagine 1991, I'm talking about 1991. So then several people have looked at, we also did a project on structure adjustment program and women workers in garment factories. So what came out very clearly is that this macroeconomic policy will affect men and women differently, and women bear maximum cost of this transition from planned economy to the market economy. So this is what actually I have given here. So feminist economic analysis argues that due to different gender roles, so why women paid more burden is because of the different roles and relationship between men and women in society, and unequal access to economic resources, and macroeconomic policies will have a differential impact on men and women. So our responsibility, we as economists, it is our responsibility to find out any policy, how it is affecting men and women, whether it has equal effect on men and women or it is affecting women more. So, and similarly, people have done on trade policy. So conventional assumption that trade policy and trade liberalization are gender neutral in their formulation and impact must be rejected in favor of much more in-depth examination. See, people have done research. You can Google gender and trade. You get so many papers, research papers. So international trade also, when trade negotiations take place and trade policies take place, so they affect men and women differently through meso variables. It's not that, directly it will affect. So it will affect the imports and it will affect prices. And then when prices change, relative prices change, so it will affect households. And within the households, it will affect women more than men. That is how actually trade policies will be affecting men and women differently. So economists have looked at the trade policies. So gender is the basis for a very basic division of labor within the households. And as I told you, it is the division between productive and reproductive activities. So how much time is spent in reproductive activities? I just remember that reproductive activities is not producing babies alone. Reproductive activities are taking care of the children, taking care of the sick and old people within the household. They are all considered, and taking care of the babies and all that comes under the reproductive activities or responsibilities. So I explained to you, and biological determination, all this has been explained. Because there is less time, I will get into the feminist economics. So feminist economists have used gender as a category of analysis, especially at micro and meso levels, both to critique orthodox approaches to economics and construct a new approach. So if you read the writings of feminist economists, so they have used gender as a category. So as a category at the micro level and meso level, because policy is for all. But at micro level and meso level, there are differences. So based on those differences, they came out with the findings that these macro policies affect men and women differently. So why it is important to know about this is because if government is making some policies or introducing some measures, so then it is important to know what kind of measures are to be introduced after understanding how it affects men and women. So feminist economists have looked at it. This is a kind of gender mainstreaming. I feel that it is a gender mainstreaming. So we know that, we will come to hardcore economics. So hardcore economics, what it says, that efficiency requires the right person in right job and producing right goods and services. See, our hardcore economics, what it says is everything has to be efficiently produced. For everything has to be efficiently taken place. So what has to happen? So there should be right person, right job, and right goods, and all things should be done correctly. So then only resources will be at the optimum level. So our traditional economics, what it says that how we can achieve this is competitive product and labor markets. See, all of us know that economic efficiency can be achieved through competitive product and labor markets. See, product market is, product market. You also know what is labor market. So economic efficiency in any economy can be achieved. That is we studied in traditional economics. We know that, economic efficiency can be achieved through competitive markets because, in a perfectly competitive market, no one can make extra normal profits, and goods and services will be diverted to the line of production where they get maximum benefit. And perfectly competitive market is the best ideal situation. So, and perfectly competitive market in factor market as well as in the product market also. In the factor market, if there is perfect competition, labor will be efficiently distributed. It will be distributed where they get maximum marginal revenue, So where they get paid according to their marginal product, MRP, marginal revenue product. So that is actually the ideal situation. So what we studied is that in a perfectly competitive market is the best institution. So through perfectly competitive market, resources will be efficiently utilized so that we'll get maximum out of each resource. So, but how this is achieved is, in a traditional economics, market determines prices. We know market determines prices according to the balance of demand and supply in traditional economics. So prices provide signal for relative scarcity, and the prices also act as incentive. Price tells the producer to produce more, and the price gives signal to the consumer to consume less. So all these signals prices are the basic signals, and the price also acts as an incentive for the producer to produce more, and agents move resources towards most products where generate highest return. So in a perfectly competitive market, as I told you, that the resources will be diverted to the where they get highest return. So this is the economics which we studied, and in a perfectly competitive market, all these things take place. So once Adam Smith, I really liked it. What Adam Smith says is that it is not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, or the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their self-interest. We address ourselves not to their humanity, but to their self-interest. So Adam Smith talks about enlightened self-interest. In attaining your interest, you will also be contributing, because my interest is to produce, to earn income, maximum income. So what I do is I take production activities, and when I take production activities, resources will be distributed. That is the thing. So that is a perfectly competitive market. So, but now the question is, this argument requires that agents be able to follow their self-interest. See, when this perfectly competitive market works, it is based on the assumption that people have knowledge, people have freedom to buy, to act, not only buy or sell. So when people have freedom, they will be agents. In the sense, people have freedom, this market works, the perfectly competitive market works. But the pursuit of self-interest must be constrained by competition. So what are the conditions which will allow the pursuit of self-interest to reach efficiency? I will come to this. So in a perfectly competitive market, what are the conditions? We know that, all agents must have sufficient equal access to information to operate efficiently. We know one of the conditions for perfectly competitive market is large number of buyers and large number of sellers. Apart from that, they have information. Everybody has got the information so that, resources will flow. And second condition is all the agents must have sufficient equal freedom to act on this information. See, if market says to produce more, so I can produce more, but I don't have freedom. Government has imposed some restriction. You can't produce more than 100 units. Then what will happen? I can't produce more. So I can't respond to market. So another important thing is freedom to act on this information. And this includes equal control of resources and access to further resources. Only when I have access for more raw material, I can produce more when market signals. If I don't have that, I can't produce more. And agents must pay the same common prices. You also know that same common prices. It is one of the important things, conditions for perfectly competitive market. So then if all these things are there, markets will automatically respond to consumers' demand. That is, the right products will be offered to market, will allocate the right inputs, including labor, to the production of these products. So assuming agents are the best judge of their own welfare, then the voluntary nature of the interaction in the market will mean that welfare will be the higher than otherwise. See, when all these conditions are there, when market players have got sufficient information, everybody has sufficient information. And second thing is they have sufficient information and also they have freedom to act. And they also have freedom to act. They also have sufficient resources. See, so many ifs are there. First thing is they should have information. This has implication. Why I am stressing all this thing is feminist economists argue only on this. So first thing is all the agents should have information to operate efficiently, and all the agents should have freedom to act, and all the agents should have resources to act, and all the agents must be facing the common prices. When all these things are there, automatically market will reach a efficient level of equilibrium condition. But what happens is, in the case of women, in the case of men and women, how many of these conditions are fulfilling? Feminist economists argue this. Why there should be, why gender analysis is necessary is perfectly competitive market, whatever we are talking about. When we are talking about perfectly competitive market, we assume that people have freedom, people have sufficient knowledge, people have resources, and all these things we assume. When these assumptions fail, when these assumptions are not there, what happens? What happens to our model? What happens to increasing the, what happens to reaching a situation, an equilibrium level where all the resources are efficiently utilized? So this collapses, this whole thing collapses. See, for example, if in the case of women, it is not common for both men and women. It is not equal for men and women. See, for example, in the case of females, first of all, their information levels are very low. So I'm warning both men and women in the group that anything we are talking about women, we are not talking about 35 or 50 years. We are talking about much more who do not have access to resources, not have access to information, who do not have freedom to buy whatever they want to buy, who do not have resources to buy whatever they want to buy. I'm talking about those things. So in a perfectly competitive market, we are assuming all these things. So these things are not common, not equal for both men and women. So in the case of women, first of all, their information levels are very low. Very few women have got access to information, how much price it is sold and how much price it is purchased. And at the same time, very few women have got freedom to buy, freedom to act. Yes, this is what I want, but I have no freedom to buy. And similarly, another thing is, even if they have freedom also, there are no resources. They don't have access to resources. So, and if 50% or even 40% or even 30% of your demand is controlled by these factors, what will happen to your demand theory? What will happen to your resources? What will happen to the efficiency of resources? Please think. So what can be done? How our economic theory has to be changed? Because all the while we are reading supply, this is supply curve, this is demand curve, supply and demand equal, this is the demand, this price demand, this is the price, this is the demand. When price decreases, demand increases. So all that we are talking about. When people's choices change, demand curve gets shifted, income changes shifted, all these things we are talking about. So if these assumptions are not fulfilling, if people don't have freedom to buy, if people don't have information, if people don't have access to resources, what will happen to demand? Whether demand curve still behaves similarly, whether supply curve behaves similarly, whether the demand and supply curve are the same for both men and women. So these are the questions that feminist economists are struggling to bring it to mainstream and develop the new models, new economic models. No, institutional economics, NIE, there is one website. So there, all these discussions are taking place. It is very, very important to look at, and you are all very young and your minds are still fresh. So you should think in this direction, see how economic theory can be made gender sensitive. So that is one argument. See, one argument is why gender is not included in the economic analysis. Why it is important to include is, this is one argument. And the second argument is, many economists also emphasize the importance of entrepreneurship. All of you know that entrepreneurship is very, very essential for the development of any country. So entrepreneurs are those individuals who have the imagination and our Schumpeter characteristics of entrepreneurs, what and all they're expected to be doing. So they have different ideas and new services and all these things. So entrepreneurship is a vital ingredient for economic growth. So its development requires the maximum substantive freedom and access to resources. See, if you have some fantastic idea, it is not sufficient. That idea has to implement that idea, first of all, you need freedom to talk about it. And second one is you need resources. So if development requires its development requires the maximum substantive freedom and access to resources to support the new products and ideas. So the importance of gender in this framework. If agents do not have access to same resources on the same terms and same relative prices, so what happens is the signals, price signals. See, prices have got responsibility. They are supposed to be giving signals to producers and consumers. So if there is no access to same resources, so price signals will not properly reflect the real sacrifices, and price signals will not provide the appropriate incentives. Why I am talking about real sacrifices? When you are giving money, it is sacrifice. Like taxes also involve sacrifice. And agents will not be able to respond to these incentives in most societies to a greater or lesser extent. So this collapses, the whole argument collapses. And in reality, access to resources is gendered. See, what I mean is, I think, because of the earlier concept that I have explained, you know what it means. So access to resources is gendered in the sense it is constrained by gender norms. So many women do not have access to their own resources. Many a time people think that, educated and working women have got more access to resources. Several of the households, even women, their own earnings, they have no control over their own earnings. That is the reality. So access to resources is gendered. Men have more access to resources, women have less. And ability to respond to incentives. Ability to respond to incentives is also highly gendered. See, for example, government provides some incentive for girls to work outside, but they are not able to go. Yesterday only I met one girl. She is a bright girl, but a bright student, studied electronic media. She gets good opportunities in Bangalore, but she is not able to. She is not able to because she is a girl and because girls are not sent outside. So ability to respond to incentives is also, means labor market is ready to help her, but absorb her, but she is not willing to go because of the gender situation. So then the effective prices faced by men and women are gendered. They are different. So these things will take place in reality. The resources, access to resources is gendered, and ability to respond to incentives is also gendered, and effective prices faced by men and women. So what is this effective prices? I will talk about it. So first one is access to resources. Access to resources, working capital. You may be wondering that banks are coming with so many less, what is called, banks are giving interest subsidy and all that to women. You may be arguing that. But even there also, there are so many constraints. My research also has shown that the women face a lot of problems in accessing the credit. And access to long-term credit is also, only men get access to that. And access to land. So all these are constrained access to women. So similarly, you also have ability to respond. I'm talking about each and every one. So first one is access to resources. And second one is ability to respond to incentives. So because control of land, control of capital, and control of labor. So control of labor is, do women have full rights on their own labor? This is one example which I told you. She is capable, but she is not sent out because she is a girl. So that is the example for women do not have control over their labor. So that is one classic example for women who do not have access to their own labor. So these are the these are the reasons why women don't respond to the incentives. Then what are the effective prices faced by men and women? The effective prices faced by men and women are different. The effective price by an agent is the marketplace plus other costs of transacting. We talk about transaction costs. Economics, we talk about transaction costs. So what is effective price is the price that we pay and also the cost of transacting. See, for example, the incentive price is marketplace plus these transaction costs. So transaction costs include time, covering other necessary responsibilities, cost of obtaining information, cost of enforcement. I'll just give you one example. To going to office. Going to office, if public transportation is taken, so both men and women, if both are going by public transportation, whatever is the cost that you are paying, so that is the cost. That is the actual cost of transportation cost. But in going the in taking up the transportation cost, the actual cost that women pay is more. Why? Because if she has to work, she has to arrange a servant maid at home, and she has to rush and take care of children, leaving them in school or wherever they are. So all these are non-monetary costs. So they are really costs, but they are non-monetary costs and they are the transaction costs. If she is not going to work, she need not pay these costs. But so here the issue is that men may argue that who asked her to go. It is not that. We are not talking about those issues. What we are talking about is the cost that women pay. The cost that women pay are much more than the cost that men are paying. So that is the effective prices. So women must usually bear the disproportionate share of these costs. So these have been dubbed as reproductive tax. In feminist research, feminist economics, this is known as what is called the reproductive tax. So the effective incentive price faced by men and women is different. So, and why it is important, why we have to look at this, you may ask. Why we have to look at this is, if you understand the cost involved is, you can evolve some methodologies, you can evolve some incentives or some interventions rather. See, for example, in some countries, there is, for children, if a working mother has got children below 1 year or 2 years, till they come to 2 years, some extra incentives are given for her. So that, by the till children come to school, there will be some extra monetary benefit to employ the help or to keep them in crash or something like that. So such kind of supports can be designed if you understand what are the effective costs that women are paying. That is why it is important, and as economists, we should be working on this. And because of this, because the effective costs are different, what are the consequences? What are the issues? So if transaction costs are not similar for different agents, then market price will not reflect the real incentive and real scarcity. If prices do not reflect real incentives and real scarcities, microeconomic theory suggests the existence of inefficient resource allocation. See, bottom line is, because of this, we are not able to use the resources efficiently. Why? Because we have not taken into consideration the transaction cost. We have not taken into the differences in transaction cost that is paid by men and women. So we assume that costs are same. We assume that whatever is the market price, because when production is taking place, whatever is the material cost, labor cost, we take only into consideration only those costs. We are not taking into consideration the transaction cost. So because of that, the price, similarly, same way we talk about in environmental costs also. Some of you, those who are familiar with environmental economics and resource economics, you will understand the social cost, marginal social cost and economic cost. So similarly here also the social cost is very, very high. So unless until they are also taken into consideration, markets do not really reflect the actual prices that they are to be reflecting. So that leads to what is called the market failure in this case also. And new institutional economics and gender. the new institutional economics argues that different levels of transaction costs in different societies have an enormous influence on the pattern and rate of economic growth. Why we have to talk about these transaction costs is they have an influence on the economic growth. So if for example, if the transaction costs are not taken place, if she is staying at home, so then her public domain and contribution in public domain would not be entering into our national income statistics, and it won't be contributing to economic growth. So that is why it is important. NIE argues that it is important to look at the transaction costs. So then effective institutions reduce transaction costs and encourage socially productive activities and vice versa. So what NIE argues is that it is important to reduce the transaction costs so that, the production will be at an efficient level. So institutions most often emphasized by what are the institutions? So institutions are property rights, contract law, employment law, rules governing the justice, judiciary. So all these are some of the institutions which need to be gendered, which need to be, they follow the gender sensitive interventions so that, the transaction costs will be less. So when transaction costs are less, the resource use will be efficient. So in summary, the existence of widespread gender inequality allows the inference of suboptimal allocation. See, the bottom line is, I have given you two arguments. So one is how markets don't work, and second one is how they will be suboptimal level if equilibrium takes place. So because of this, based on these two arguments, we can say that, it is important for the countries to reduce the gender gap or to reduce the gender inequality so that, resources will be optimally allocated. And, we are not asking charity. Women are not asking for charity, allowing you to come work for work. It is not for your sake. It is for the economy. It is for the growth to take place. It is important to reduce the gender inequalities yeah. So gender and economic analysis of gender relation is quite recent. Even though economists have isolated instances, debated women's issues in early 30s also, concept of gender relations is socially constructed. So it is somewhat recent. And evaluation of gender in macroeconomics. So it began in 70s to be recognized that economic development had generally affected men and women differently than men in developing world. So likewise, 80s also, feminist economists have looked at it. It was also recognized that the direction of causation between macroeconomy and gender relations could go both ways. See, whether development leads to gender equality or gender equality leads to economic growth or development. A lot of research has gone into this particular issue. And a line of analysis that began with the recognition of the gender non-neutral effects of macroeconomic policies evolved, because all the while people are thinking that macroeconomic policies are gender neutral. They affect men and women equally, but it has been proved that, there are gender differences. So it is now happening. So engendered macroeconomic policies. So now people are looking at engendering the macroeconomic modeling. So when macroeconomic models for the entire economy, when they are developed, people are trying to put gender also in the macroeconomic policies. Otherwise, it was never taken care. So first method entails disaggregation by gender. So people are looking at, some models have been developed. The objective is to highlight the implications of difference in behavior between two genders. So how men behave and how women behave. Actually, market research, they look at these things. When private companies, when they do McKinsey and all, when they do KPMG, when they do market surveys, they look at women's response and men's response, and they target their, their advertisements and incentives and all that. They will be based on the men and women survey. So, and second one is discrimination in labor market. So labor market is also highly discriminating. So classical theory assumed that wage and employment are determined by demand and supply. So all of you know that in a labor market, wages are being determined by supply and demand forces of labor supply. So gender insensitivity makes women's work invisible I will come because time is less. I will come to this equation. So that you know. So in this, this is easy to explain. So employment theory, employment is a function of all these things. Employment is a function of literacy and skills acquired, income, marital status. It has been done in research. Several people have come about. But what happens is this employment function is not same for men and women. There are gender differences. See, for example, marital status. Marital status does not influence participation in the employment for men. Marital, whether boy is married or unmarried, doesn't make a difference when they come to work. But whereas in the case of females, participation in labor market, it depends on whether she is married or unmarried. So in the case of married girls, there are several sorry. So there are several restrictions for them to come to job. So here marriage is not the same. The employment function doesn't work for men and women to predict. It doesn't work. And similarly, income. So income, whether they have, whether they are rich or poor, they come to job. But whereas in the case of females, highly higher income groups, they may not. Whereas labor participation is more in the low income groups. So marital status, as I already told you. So what I am trying to tell here is that classical employment theory, where employment participation in any workforce is a function of some factors, but these factors are not same for men and women. So some people have developed, looked into research, and they use these models to identify the wage gap. So Gary Becker's theory is there. Gary Becker's theory, because there is no time, I could not explain. He used theory, why they discriminate, why there is discrimination between men and women in wages. Why? Because employer finds employing a female is more expensive than employing a man. Because employing a female, she may ask for maternity leave. She may frequently take leave. And after sending her to training and all that, suddenly she will get married and she will leave the job because of whatever is the reason. So then there is more cost in employing females than men. So that is why the employers discriminate, the wage discrimination. And recent government of India brought out a rule that, women are to be provided what is called maternity leave, compulsory maternity leave. So because of that, it's a good policy, but it is backfired. It is backfired in the sense now companies are, because they have to give a maternity leave without work, and which is against their own philosophy. So there will be some unwritten laws working. Unwritten laws working. Girl means if both boy and girl are equally qualified, equally performed well in the interview, still they would prefer boys, because now I'm not talking about where more girls are there, but generally it is they will be discriminated. So all these have negative implications on the economic efficiency. And this is gender and institutional institutions. I will talk about this in the next lecture, because OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, they came out with some of the indicators to understand the social institutions, how they affect gender relations.